أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night we spoke about the revelation of the tablets to Musa alayhi salam, specifically the revelation of the Torah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-A'raf, verse 145, He mentions the revelation that took place when Musa alayhi salam was on Mount Sinai. Allah says, وَكَتَبْنَا لَهُ فِي الْأَلْوَاحِ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ مَوْعِظَةً. And we wrote down, we inscribed upon the tablets regarding everything concerning the admonishments. وَتَفْصِيلًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and an explanation of all things. We mentioned last night that there is a difference of opinion among Muslims and the Judeo-Christians regarding the nature of these tablets. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, the tablets refer to the 10 Commandments, and the Torah is something separate. The Torah in the Judeo-Christian tradition refers to the first 5 books of the Old Testament, whereas the majority of Muslim scholars, they contend that the tablets were essentially the medium through which the Torah was written, because the tablets contain an explanation of all things. Now, the Qur'an mentions that tablets were sent down to Musa alayhi salam, and those tablets contain these inscriptions. The Qur'an mentions that there were multiple tablets. Al-Wah means that there are a minimum of 3. So it's not 2 as mentioned in the Old Testament. Now the Qur'an doesn't mention what these tablets were made of. In the Old Testament, it seems that they are described as stone tablets. The Qur'an is silent. Now, from a logistical perspective, many Muslim scholars have doubted that they were stone tablets, because logistically it would be very difficult to carry multiple stone slabs down the mountain. So it seems that most likely they were wooden tablets. And upon these wooden tablets, you have the inscription of the 10 Commandments and, whatever other things were revealed to Musa alayhi salam. So this is where we left off in our discussion. And we mentioned that Musa alayhi salam had selected 70 members of Bani Israel to join him on his ascent to Mount Sinai. They were there with him. They fasted for 30 days. They engaged in worship for 30 days in preparation to receive and to witness the revelation that was descending upon Musa. Now, initially, they were skeptical. They wanted to hear God, because Musa alayhi salam receives direct inspiration from Allah. Allah speaks to him directly. They wanted to hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way that Musa is able to hear. And the narrations mention that they were made to hear that voice that was created by God. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have a voice, He creates a voice. Now, after hearing the voice and after witnessing the revelation, they still refused to accept that this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealing to Musa. So they say to him, لَن نُؤْمِن لَكْ حَتَّى نَرَى اللَّهَ جَهْرَةً, that we will not believe until we see God. It's not enough even for us to hear. We want to see God. And we mentioned last night the verses relating to this demand that was put forward by them. Now, after Musa receives these tablets, and after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demonstrates to them that He cannot be seen, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directed them towards the mountain, He manifested His glory to the mountain was decimated, they perished, Allah revived them. After all of this finishes, now Musa alayhi salam is preparing to come down from the mountain. He wants to descend now and go to base camp, because at the foot of the mountain, Bani Israel, hundreds of thousands of them are stationed at the base of the mountain. Now, here, if Musa alayhi salam was shocked by the lack of faith that the 70 with him had shown, there was a greater calamity waiting for him at the bottom of the mountain. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before Musa reaches the bottom of the mountain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to him the mutiny that has taken place at base camp. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Taha, Surah 20, Ayah 85, He gives Musa, as we say, He gives him a heads up regarding what is taking place at the foot of the mountain with his community. Ayah number 85 of Surah Taha, قَالَ فَإِنَّا قَدْ فَتَنَّا قَوْمَكَ. O Musa, we have tested your community. This delay of 10 days, because initially the meeting was 30 days. وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 لَيْلَةً وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ. Allah prolonged that meeting an additional 10 days. And this was Allah's plan, for that 10-day extension to serve as a trial for Bani Israel. قال إنا قد فتنا قومك إنا قد فتنا قومك من بعدك وأضلهم السامري. We tested your community, O Musa, after you left them, and a Samiri has misguided them. In this period, 10 days, you are going to go back to a misguided community. Now, a question here arises. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inform Musa that his community has been misguided? Why did He give him that heads up? Ultimately, Musa is going to go and see for himself. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inform Musa before he arrives? It seems that this was done for 3 reasons. Number 1, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to mentally prepare Musa alayhi salam for what he is about to witness. To make it a little bit easier on him, that Allah wants to give him that time to prepare, mentally prepare for what he is about to witness. Because Musa alayhi salam really cares about his people. If he was so offended and so distraught when his community said to him that we want to see God. Imagine what will happen to Musa if he goes and he just witnesses them worshiping an idol. So to ease the anguish of Musa alayhi salam, to prepare him, Allah informs him of what is happening at base camp. Number two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to reveal to Musa who is the mastermind behind this mutiny. Because when you go down, you have 700,000 people there. To make it easier for Musa alayhi salam to get to the root of the problem, he identifies the mastermind, that this is the perpetrator, as-Samiri. Number three, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perhaps wanted to give Musa some time to formulate a plan as to what to do. As he's going down the mountain, he's thinking, he's planning. What is the strategy that we should employ? How should we deal with this problem? Now, what's interesting is that when Musa alayhi salam arrives, the Qur'an tells us that he interrogates three groups of people. He interrogates three parties. So when his community falls into idol worship, there are three groups that he engages with. He has a conversation with them. He questions them. He interrogates them. The three groups are, number one, you see that he speaks to Harun. What's beautiful about Musa alayhi salam, even though Allah had already revealed to him who is the perpetrator, Musa's sense of justice dictates that he has to allow and give everyone an opportunity to defend themselves. So here we have an example. Sometimes people ask, if the Prophet knew, if the Prophet had ilmul ghaib, why didn't he act upon it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not always permit his representatives to act on their knowledge of the unseen. They have to act on what is evident. They have to go through the natural course of investigation. So Musa alayhi salam, he affords an opportunity to everyone involved, to Harun, to Samiri. So even though Allah had told Musa that Samiri is the one who misguided them, nonetheless, we see that Musa alayhi salam still affords Samiri the opportunity to explain himself, to defend himself. So Musa, as we will see in the coming ayat, Musa will question Harun, and we'll speak about why he does this. He will question Samiri, and he will also question Bani Israel, the followers, those who were worshiping the idol along with Samiri. Now, so Musa alayhi salam, he questions these three parties. He listens attentively to their arguments, to their defense, and then he issues, you will see that he issues a verdict on all of them only after he listens to their defense and evaluates the evidence. Musa alayhi salam, he comes down, he returns. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala captures that moment when Musa arrives at base camp. He comes down in Surah Taha, ayah 86. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَرَجَعَ مُوسَى إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Musa returned to his people and he was ghadban. Ghadban doesn't mean just he was angry. Ghadban follows the pattern of fa'lan. For those of you who are familiar with Arabic morphology, he was extremely angry. That his anger was manifest, very evident. He was evidently angry. غضبان أسفا, and he was also grieved. So he's angry, and at the same time, he feels sorry for his community, that after everything, this is what you've reduced yourselves to, idol worshippers. In Surah Al-A'raf, Ayah 150, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a snapshot of this moment when he comes back. وَلَمَّا رَجَعَ مُوسَى إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا. When Musa came back to his community, he was angry, he was grieved. قَالَ بِئْسَ مَا خَلَفْتُمُونِي مِنْ بَعْدِي. How wretched are you in terms of what you did after me? أَعَجَلْتُمْ أَمْرَ رَبِّكُمْ. Were you that impatient with respect to the decree of Allah? I told you 30 days, there was a 10-day delay. Allah extended it. You were that impatient that you abandoned Tawheed, you abandoned your entire religious identity. You were that impatient. And then the ayah says, وَأَلْقَى الْأَلْوَاحِ. Musa alayhi salam here, what he does is, he's angry. He expresses his anger verbally, and he also expresses his anger non-verbally. What does he do? He casts down the tablets. He threw down the tablets. وَأَلْقَى الْأَلْوَاحِ. Now, the Qur'an tells us that look at the reaction of Musa. He comes down, he's angry, he verbalizes his anger, he rebukes his community, he throws down the tablets. وَأَخَذَ بِرَأْسِ أَخِيهِ يَجُرُّهُ إِلَيْهِ. The Qur'an says that he threw down the tablets and he pulled the hair, the head of his brother. He dragged his brother, meaning that Musa alayhi salam, the first person that he interrogates is who? Harun. And Musa alayhi salam, by doing this, he was sending a very powerful message. So even though he knows that Harun is innocent, but he wants to show Bani Israel that no one is above the law of God. No one is above the law. Now here you may wonder, why is Musa alayhi salam so angry? Doesn't Islam teach us that we should restrain our anger, that we should control our anger? You know, when you read the story of Musa, to the untrained person, you might think that Musa has some anger management issues. Because if you look at the beginning of his life, the story of Musa starts with what? With him killing an Egyptian. He sees one of the Israelites getting beat up by a Coptic. He intervenes and he punches the guy. And he ends up killing the guy. And now Musa alayhi salam comes down from Mount Sinai. He sees his community worshiping an idol. He throws down the tablets and now he's pulling the head of Harun. Is anger always a negative trait? You see, my dear brothers and sisters, that if anger was inherently a vice, if it was negative, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create within us the faculty of anger? Because the soul has certain faculties. The soul has certain faculties. Al-Quwa al-Aqliya, the faculty of reason. Al-Quwa al-Ghadabiyya, the faculty of anger. Al-Quwa al-Shahwiyya, the faculty of desire, and the faculty of imagination. These four faculties. And you can remember them with the acronym RAID, R-A-I-D. These are the four faculties: reason, anger, imagination, and RAID. Meaning, this faculty of anger, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala built it within us. We are hardwired to have this faculty. But the question is, when should you express your anger? The problem with many of us, we become angry and we lose our temper over trivial things, things that are not important, things that we should overlook, things that we shouldn't get so riled up about. Some of us, we get angry over silly things. Some of us destroy our families because we get angry over things that don't deserve our anger. You know, as the saying goes, if small things make you angry, isn't that an indicator of how big you are? So you have to ask yourself, what makes you angry? If trivial things make you angry, if small things make you angry, that means you're a small person. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, time and time again, He reminds us that a mu'min should restrain his anger. Because many of the things that trigger you, they shouldn't trigger you. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ. Allah describes the believers as those who restrain their anger. Some of us, we get angry if, our food is delayed. We get angry if our plans don't go according to our plans. We get angry if someone doesn't say salam to us. We get angry if someone leaves us out of a dinner party. We get angry over all of these things. And the times when we should be angry, we're not angry. There are people dying of hunger. Doesn't bother us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws are being violated. It doesn't bother us. Everything else bothers us, but the things that should bother us, that should anger us, they don't anger us. Now here, Musa alayhi salam, his anger is about what? Is it for something personal? His anger is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, we should be careful about our anger when it comes to trivial issues. But Musa alayhi salam very strategically expresses his anger to convey to his community that you have committed an abomination. This is not something, because if Musa came down and he was just like, it's not a big deal, we'll talk about it later, they will never understand the gravity of the sin that they committed. He wants this incident to be etched in their memory forever so they never go back to shirk. This is what Musa alayhi salam is doing. So, yes, we have many ahadith that warn us about anger. In fact, we have a narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi alayhi. He says, al-ghadabu narun muqada. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says that in the hadith that's attributed to him, he says, anger, is like, especially that unwarranted anger over silly things. He says, anger is like an ignited fire. Man kadhamahu atfa'ahu. Whoever restrains his anger is like the one who has put out that fire that was ignited. وَمَنْ أَطْلَقَهَا كَانَ أَوَّلُ مُحْتَرَقٌ بِهَا. But whoever allows the flames of his anger to continue to rage on, he will be the first one to be burned by its flames. This is very true, brothers and sisters. Sometimes things that you do in a fit of anger, you can't go back. You say things out of anger, even if you apologize. That's it. You said it. The damage has been done. You make a hasty decision because you're angry. Do you know how many people I've met who have ended their marriages? They got divorced because in a fit of rage, they contacted this lawyer, they did this, they said that, they took hasty actions. And then after a few months and a few years, they regret what they did. That's it. That's it. All because you didn't restrain your anger. And the one who suffered the most from the anger is you. You think that your anger is damaging the others. It is damaging to others, but you are the first victim of your anger. This is why the Prophet he teaches us how to cool down. If you're angry, the Prophet says, if you're angry and you're sitting, stand up. Go for a walk. If you're standing and you're angry, sit down. Go do wudu. Go do wudu with cold water to cool down. I've seen some brothers, I don't know if wudu, maybe they have to do ghusl, not just wudu, from how angry they get. The Prophet teaches us that we have to be very careful because most of the time our anger is not justified. Our anger comes from our ego. But with Musa alayhi salam, his anger is not coming from his ego. His anger is rooted in his love and his reverence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His anger is rooted in his love for his community. So you see that Musa alayhi salam, he throws down the tablets. And by doing this, he's sending a very powerful message. And that message is what? So you can imagine Musa alayhi salam returning and Bani Israel, essentially from their perspective, that Musa has lost it. Musa has thrown down the tablets. And by doing this, Musa is trying to convey to them that there is no point in me teaching you the Torah or teaching you revelation because we have a bigger problem now. And that is that I have to cure this spiritual disease in you before you can even benefit from revelation. You have to purify this. What has happened to you people? So Musa alayhi salam, again, what he does is he does all of this to show Bani Israel that you didn't just make a small mistake now. What you did is very serious. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he speaks about the crime of polytheism, you and I, we don't understand the gravity of this crime. There are some sins that we understand how abhorrent they are. If I tell you, for example, if someone rapes a child, do you think they deserve a harsh punishment or a mild punishment? You say, harsh punishment? What an ugly, disgusting thing. The Qur'an tells us that the greatest crime, above all of the crimes, is shirk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an, in Surah al-Nisa, ayah 48, he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very merciful, very forgiving. Allah forgives all of the sins except for one. Imagine how serious this crime is, that if someone on the day of judgment meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having ascribed partners to him, and let's say that the truth was delivered to them and they stubbornly, for whatever reason, they held on to their false beliefs despite the truth being evident, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not pardon them. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ. Allah will never forgive the one who ascribes partners to him. But other than that, Allah may forgive. This is a serious crime. The first person that Musa alayhi salam interrogates is none other than Harun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَأَخَذَ بِرَأْسِ أَخِيهِ يَجُرُّهُ إِلَيْهِ. Musa alayhi salam, he literally pulls the head of his brother. In another ayah, he pulls the hair on his head and his beard. A very dramatic scene. قال يا هارون ما منعك إذ رأيتهم ضلوا. This is in Surah Taha, verses 92 and 93. O Harun, what prevented you from interfering when you saw that they were going astray? أَلَّا تَتَّبِعَنِ أَفَعَصَيْتَ أَمْرِي. Did you not follow me? Did you disobey my orders? Why didn't you interfere? Now, of course, Musa alayhi salam, he knows that his brother is innocent. He knows that his brother is a prophet of God. But Musa alayhi salam, he has to go through this judicial procedure. Because, and this happens even in the courtrooms today. Even if the judge and the evidence is there that this person is innocent, we still have to go through the system to establish the innocence of those who are innocent and the guilt of those who are guilty. So just because you are being questioned, it doesn't mean that I believe that you're guilty. Maybe I am questioning you because I want it to be made clear that you're actually innocent. So Musa alayhi salam, he's asking Harun this question so he can publicly and for the history books, he can exonerate himself. So he's not associated with the crime that they had committed. So this lesson is for us, my dear brothers and sisters, that when we run organizations, for example, we shouldn't play the game of favoritism and nepotism, right? The laws apply to everybody. You know, sometimes we have Muslim organizations where there are certain groups, certain families, no, they're above the bylaws because they're fulan and son of fulan and daughter of fulan. But with Musa alayhi salam, is anyone above the law of God? No one is, not even Harun. This is the adala, this is the justice of Musa alayhi salam. So no one is above the law. And Musa alayhi salam wants to make it very clear. Because if Musa came down and he only questioned Samiri, they're like, oh, of course, his brother. He's siding with his brother. Musa wants to make it very clear that my relationship with Harun is not just a relationship of brothers. This is not a nepotistic relationship. This is a relationship based on haqq. So to dispel any accusations of nepotism, favoritism, the first one that Musa questions is Harun. Ultimately, and there's another lesson here for us, that ultimately when you are in a position of authority, people like to be in authority because they like the privileges of authority. But here Musa is reminding us that with authority comes responsibility. You want to be the leader of the community? The buck stops with you. The buck stops with you. Even with Harun, you are the first one that's going to be asked. And this is how we have to be. Whether you are the head of the household or the head of an organization, do not deflect the responsibility to someone else. You assume leadership, the buck stops with you. You have to answer. Now, Harun gives his reply. Musa is questioning, and you can imagine everyone is listening. Musa asked Harun, what prevented you from interfering? Did you disobey me, Harun? Ayah 94 of Surah Taha, قَالَ يَا ابْنَ Look at how Harun responds. Harun sees that his brother is very angry. So to appeal to his emotions, to calm him down, he says to him, O son of our mother, يَا ابْنَ لَا تَأْخُذْ بِلِحْيَتِي وَلَا بِرَأْسِي. Don't pull me from my hair, do not pull my beard. إني خشيت أن تقول فرقت بيني وبين بني إسرائيل. I was afraid that if I interfered, you would have said that I caused disunity among your people. Things became very serious. If I interfered, and if you wanted me to stop what was going to happen, it would have required violence. Some would have joined me, others would have joined Samiri, and there would have been a bloodbath. There would have been a complete breakdown of your community. وَلَمْ تَرْقُبْ قَوْلِي. And you would have said that, why did you make such an important decision without consulting with me? So Harun is saying that to go to war is not something that I felt that I could do unilaterally without first consulting with you. And subhanallah, notice the parallel between Ali and Harun. Harun doesn't fight because he says that this is something that requires permission from you, O Musa. Notice that with Ali, he never drew his sword. Why? Because the Prophet told him that only do so if you have 40 supporters. Amir al-Mu'mineen knew that something like this, I have to take the directions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now here you can imagine that Bani Israel is thinking to themselves that if Musa is this stern with his brother who's innocent, what is he going to do to Samiri? What is he going to do to us? Now, what's interesting about the Quran is that there are more ayat that capture the conversation between Musa and Harun than Musa and Samiri. Why is it that the Quran speaks more about the conversation between Musa and Harun while we know that the perpetrator, the mastermind, is Samiri? You would think that the Quran would speak more about Musa's conversation with the head of the fitna, which is Samiri. The Quran emphasizes more on the conversation between Musa and Harun. Why? To understand why, you have to go to the Old Testament. I mentioned in my previous sessions that sometimes the Quran emphasizes a point to refute the biblical narrative. In the book of Exodus, chapter 32, I'll read to you a few sentences verbatim so you understand, this is why the Quran spends so much time discussing the conversation between Musa and Harun. The book of Exodus, chapter 32, it says, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming from the mountain, Musa was delayed, they gathered around Aaron. Aaron is the biblical name for Harun. And said, they came, so the Israelites, they gathered around Harun, according to the Old Testament. Come make us gods who will go before us. So Bani Israel, according to the book of Exodus, they asked Harun that Musa is taking too long, make some idols for us. As for this fellow Moses, look at how they speak about Musa, this fellow. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. We don't know. Did Musa die? Musa doesn't seem like he's coming back. Oh, Aaron, we want you to make some gods for us. Now, what was the response of Harun in the book of Exodus? According to the Old Testament, Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me. So Harun, according to the Old Testament, says, bring all of the gold. So all the people took of their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf. fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, these are our gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. According to the book of Exodus, who fashioned the golden calf? Harun. According to the Old Testament, Harun was the mastermind. Harun was the one who built the idol for them. Harun was the one who misguided. Harun was the one who betrayed. This is why, number one, this is why we know that the Torah is distorted. And this has been a strategy throughout history, that to justify our own moral indiscretions, what we do is we attribute them to the prophets. You know, so to make ourselves feel better, we bring the prophets down. We don't try to go up to their level. The Old Testament blames Harun for being the one who fashioned the golden calf. And this is why the Qur'an emphasizes so much on the conversation between Musa and Harun to prove the innocence of Harun. You see the beauty of the Qur'an? Now, in verse number 90 of Surah Taha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again, وَلَقَدْ قَالَ لَهُمْ هَارُونَ. Allah sets the record straight as to what really happened. وَلَقَدْ قَالَ لَهُمْ هَارُونُ مِنْ قَبْلِ. And Harun said to them, said to Bani Israel, يَا قَوْمِ إِنَّمَا فُتِنْتُمْ بِهِ. O my community, you have been misguided by Samiri. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ. Your Lord is the beneficent Lord. فَاتَّبِعُونِي وَأَطِيعُوا أَمْرِي. And so obey me and follow me. What did they say to Harun? Ayah number 91 of Surah Taha. قَالُوا لَن نَبْرَحَ عَلَيْهِ عَاكِفِينَ حَتَّى يَرْجَعَ إِلَيْنَا مُوسَى. They say to him, we will never stop devoting ourselves to these gods. And we will remain like this until Musa returns. So the Quran tells us that Harun was the one who's calling them to worship Allah. They were the ones who were adamant about worshiping the calf. And they refused to obey Harun until Musa alayhi salam returns. When you think about the parallels between Amir al-Mu'mineen and Harun, they're incredible. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa in the famous hadith recorded, by the Prophet, and he mentions this on many occasions. Hadith al-Manzila. The Prophet says, Ya Ali, anta minni bimanzilati Harun min Musa. O Ali, you are to me as Aaron was to Moses. Illa annahu la nabiyya ba'di. What was the relationship of Harun to Musa? Was he just a companion among the 700,000? If you go to Surah Taha, the dua of Musa sheds light on the position of Harun to Musa. Surah Taha, verse 29 to 32. You know when Musa says, Rabbi shrah li sadri. Ayah number 29, what does he say? وَاجْعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِّنْ أَهْلِي. Appoint a wazir, a minister from my family. Number one, Harun is appointed by who? He's appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Musa cannot appoint Harun. Musa has to ask Allah to appoint Harun. Number one, divine designation. وَاجْعَلْ was مِنْ أَهْلِي. Harun is from the Ahl of Musa. Ali is from the Ahl of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa Ushdud bihi azri. He says, increase through him my strength. Harun strengthened Musa. He was his backbone. Ali ibn Abi Talib, every battle of Islam, he was the strength of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ushdud bihi azri, and then we'll end here. وَأَشْرِكْهُ فِي أَمْرِي. Make him a partner with me in my mission. Harun wasn't just an Israelite. Harun was the partner of Musa in his mission. And Ali ibn Abi Talib is not just a companion. Ali ibn Abi Talib is the partner of Rasulullah in his mission. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and guide us and illuminate our hearts with the teachings of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.